Well, Dr. Aslam Dasoo is the convener of the Progressive Health Forum. He joins us now via video link just to weigh in on the Life Esidemeni Inquest judgment. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Dasoo. I mean, this has been a long and harrowing 8-year wait for the grieving families, as we've seen in that clip. Your reaction as someone representing the Progressive Health Forum?
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. You're absolutely correct about this long and harrowing road. I recall at the time joining protests outside the Gauteng Department of Health when there was an absolute denial by the department, by the MEC, by the provincial government that something terrible had happened. And from then to now has been a road too long. I just heard the interview you had earlier with the family member, Christine, and she says it exactly like they feel it, and it can't be gainsaid in any way. The point really is that while we must sympathize with the families, and we hope that they find some measure of comfort now that we've gotten to this step, it is important that we consider the systemic causes of this. And I'll just give you a few points here. When this happened, and it was clear to everyone that there was culpability that lay right at the door of the MEC, she was defended rigorously by the ANC, by the governing party, the ANC, by even the Premier, who kept her in her job for months after we all knew this was happening. And it's this kind of lack of accountability, this immediate necessity to be so sensitive to the public trust that any failure in managing it must demand of you, from your own ethical, personal standards, or even from your colleagues and your superiors, that you step aside. And yet this is the current state of play in that province right now.
And I mean, the scale of this tragedy has shocked many, and families are still finding it very hard to speak about how their loved ones died. As you've heard in that clip, it's not the fact that they have just died, which is also tragic, but it is how they died. I mean, this tragedy has also highlighted just the lack of care, that is experienced by many mental health patients. I mean, what are some of the lessons that we can take from this particular tragedy, particularly just having listened to Judge Tefo?
I think we must say, first of all, that this is so out of keeping with the training of health workers, with those responsible to deliver a duty of care, that one is shocked about how one should now start taking lessons to retrain these people. These are people trained within our health systems and trained properly, so they should know everything I know, for example, about what would happen. And yet they went ahead. So there's something that occurs, the kind of negligence of the duty of care that occurs once they are in positions of authority. I have to tell you, there have been many Life Esidemeni since, perhaps not of the same scale or as shocking, but people have died. The way these people died, I mean, it brought even health workers to tears when they heard about it. You heard Judge Moseneke, former DCJ Moseneke, in his inquiry, break down when he heard some of this. Here's a man who's heard for years some of the most harrowing, difficult stories, and he couldn't even take it. It was reminiscent of how Archbishop Tutu broke down listening to testimony at the TRC. It is that profound, what has happened here. So I think that the fact that the criminal justice system is kicking in slowly and laboriously as it is, which is causing much more pain to families, is one important lesson, that you have to act quickly to find justice and to create accountability. The training of the staff that sit in the government must be questioned if they cannot first uphold the ethical standards of care for which they have been trained, which supersedes any government law.
Now, you speak about, how in the aftermath and when, the former health MEC was then called to answer, and how, there was almost this veil of, protection, over her, including from her political party, the ANC, including from the then premier at the time, as well as a government at large. You speak of accountability. The family, has called that criminal, that the former MEC, in fact, and all of those that have been implicated, particularly in that judgment, be criminally charged. I mean, what would accountability look like, particularly for the families that are still grieving? And let's not forget the other patients who also suffered under these 27 unlicensed NGOs that they were taken to.
Sure. I think the line of accountability, as we have seen and is very typical of our state, is that the flunkies, I'm using that term advisedly, the minions get thrown to the wolves while the political principals sequester themselves from any blame. I mean, we heard the then Minister of Health come to the Moseneke inquiry and, shed tears, which many people call crocodile tears, because in any decent democracy, a Minister of Health would have resigned. And it happens all over the world. But we have a strange behavior here where this immediate distancing is abetted by the criminal justice system, and it doesn't go far enough. I think if I were a family member who suffered this, I would want everyone from the minister through to the premier and the MEC, as well as the officials directly involved, to be in the dock for this. And it's sad that they are not, but this is one step forward, and we'll see how the criminal justice system takes it further through the NPA. And we still believe, and we all have to have this belief, that though the wheel of justice turns slowly, we know that grinds slowly, we know that it grinds exceedingly fine. And the truth will come out on this and the other disasters. Right now, we have a problem, for example, in the Eastern Cape, where they don't even have needles in the hospitals, which means no care can be given. And patients who had to be tranquilized, mental health patients who had to be tranquilized because of psychotic episodes, have committed suicide by jumping out of windows. And no one talks about this. And who takes responsibility? They're going to blame the staff at the hospital, I assure you, and they'll throw them under the bus. That's what the politicians do, because the MEC who was in charge there when all of this happened is now promoted to Parliament, National Parliament. So the political process moves on regardless, as though this doesn't affect them, that they are not the people who appointed these people. They're not the people who have put in the governance systems that have failed. And I think there's a serious reflection on this that is required. We are definitely going to be examining this with our colleagues and other organizations to hold these people to account. We want accountability now in the national health system, because if you don't have it, people die, and the effect is immediate and it's deadly.